Welcome to this episode of You've Got This. I am Adam Rushforth, and thank you for joining me. This mini devotional goes along with Doctrine and Covenants, sections 27 and 28. I remember several years ago, one of my little girls, when she was about 2.5 years old, we were playing in our backyard, and it was a nice summer, warm day. But she told me that she was cold and wanted to go inside to get her jacket. I tried to explain that it was actually quite warm and that I didn't think she really needed a jacket. But she wanted to get it anyway. So she proceeded to the stairs of our back deck, went up a couple of steps, and then turned to me and called for me to come. I decided not to come because I didn't think she really needed her jacket. At which point, she started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then paused and then started again. 1, 2, all the way up until 6. At that point, she said, "Daddy, time out." Well, it was at that time when I realized what she was trying to do. She was giving me, the parent, instructions and had a consequence for me if I was not going to follow them. Well, this story came to mind as I went through this section because as we go into section 28 of the Doctrine and Covenants, we find that Joseph Smith finds himself with some challenges because members of the church do not quite understand the proper order of revelation in the church. So as we dive right in, let's look for some of the principles we can find. The problem that confronted Joseph Smith was that Hiram Page, a member of the church, was receiving revelation through a stone that he was preaching to the rest of the church, and many members believed in his revelations. Now, as we remember, Hiram Page was one of the 8 witnesses, a son-in-law to Peter and Mary Whitmer, and Hiram Page was a teacher in the Aaronic priesthood. And so when he received these revelations, which talked about the building of Zion and the order of church, people, even Oliver Cowdery, were believing the things that he said. But this was done in the absence of Joseph Smith. So when Joseph learned about this, this troubled him because some of the teachings that Hiram Page was sharing were not consistent with doctrine in the New Testament and some of the truths that Joseph had revealed. And so he prayed about this and he couldn't sleep. And after several hours of just sleepless struggling in prayer, he received this revelation. And let's look, and this is in section 28, verses 6 and 7. And again, let's look for the principles that are taught. It says, and this was directed towards Oliver Cowdery, "And thou shalt not command him who is at thy head, and at the head of the church. For I have given him the keys of the mysteries, and the revelations which are sealed, until I shall appoint unto them another in his stead." And something else that adds a little clarity for me is a quote from Joseph Smith that he gave later. And he is quoted as saying, "It is contrary to the economy of God for any member of the church, or anyone, to receive instructions for those in authority higher than themselves." Simply put, the president of the church is the only one authorized to receive revelation for the entire church. Revelation flows down, not up, meaning that a bishop is not going to receive revelation to instruct the stake president, nor is a general authority going to receive revelation to instruct the prophet. And I know at that point in 1830, bishop and the office of general authorities weren't quite established. However, the principle is very clear. But it also gives us the ability to receive revelation within our stewardship as a parent or in a church calling or assignment like ministering. Well, one of the things that I think about is the responsibility of the president, that burden of receiving revelation for the church. But we are given this truth that he will never lead us astray. And I love this as it is stated by President Wilford Woodruff. And he is quoted as saying, "I say to Israel, the Lord will never permit me or any other man who stands as president of the church to lead you astray. It is not in the program. It is not in the mind of God." I love how understanding a few principles can help us avoid some dangerous situations. And one of the things that stood out to me was how clever Satan is when you think about what he does and what he uses to counterfeit things that might seem familiar to us. For example, Hiram Page was using a quote-unquote seer stone, similar to what Joseph Smith was using, and the Urim and Thummim. Well, when I think about this, I think of the difference between a real banana and a plastic banana. The real banana has a lot of nutrients to help us. But if we were to eat and digest the plastic banana, you could imagine the harm that it would do to our bodies. So some of these principles, as we think about this, help us avoid and recognize the counterfeits that Satan will put in front of us. And then this principle, which goes along with what we're talking about in Doctrine and Covenants, section 28, verse 13, it says, "For all things must be done in order and by common consent in the church." And so this is what Oliver is instructed through Joseph Smith and by the Lord to go teach to Hiram Page. And as we know, shortly after this, at a conference of the church, Hiram Page, as well as all the other saints there, renounce all of the things connected with that stone, and then unanimously sustain Joseph Smith as the only one authorized to receive revelation for the church. Going back to the experience with my daughter standing on the steps calling out to me, 1, 2, 3, and instructing me to come inside, I think of this experience and am reminded to pause and think, how am I doing? How are we doing at receiving instructions from the Lord and from those he has called to preside over us, whether it be at church or at home? And as I do so, I know that our Heavenly Father has given us an order, an organization to help us know and come back to his presence. And I testify that he has called at this time President Russell M. Nelson to be our prophet, and that he will never lead us astray. So I invite all of us to follow the counsel of God and not to seek to counsel him, nor those leaders that he has called to help us. And that as we do so, God will bless us, protect us, and that we can find safety in his fold. So remember, you've got this because he's got you.